Morning, sir.
Good morning. Can you hear
Good
me?
morning, sir.
Morning, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning. Shall we get going? Or shall we wait for a minute or two to see if more people will join? Okay. I think, how many are here? There are 11 of you here. So maybe we can get going. When I left you yesterday, I was basically trying to tell you that there is a necessity for us to understand that political science itself as a phrase deserves to be studied, not deserves to be, it needs to be studied. And yeah, it needs to be studied, and it is something that is very unique among the social sciences. Okay, the reason why I say it is unique among the social sciences is which other social science has a suffix of a science. If you speak to an economist will claim that the economic, the discipline called economics is more scientific, especially these days, given the fact that it is going more and more into metrics. Okay, metrics is nothing but mathematics, arithmetic, essentially, and so economics has always claimed that it is the most scientific of all social sciences. So, but it is only political science which carries this suffix of a science. And this again is something that happened much later in the 19th century, that it started being called science, and there are reasons for it. I was telling you, by the way of introductory remarks yesterday, that if we kind of look at uh, if we kind of look at the term politics, um, it is something that appears quite prominently only in Aristotle, actually. There is a limited application of the term by Plato. Plato doesn't use politics as much as Aristotle does. So one should possibly lay the credit for creating this thing called politics at Aristotle's door. And Aristotle is someone who used it in who used this term for a very specific reason. He was a teleological thinker, and I'll explain to you, for those of you who are not familiar with that term, teleological. I will explain that term to you once we come to Aristotle. Uh, he's a teleological thinker, and he believed that the telos, or teleology, of the human, what should we say, human race, was becoming political. Okay, so his understanding of the political and politics as an activity are completely different from what we have as an understanding of these terms. So you don't find the term politics being used in pre-Plato, pre-Socratic thought. You find it a little in Plato, like I said. Um, though, one of the difficulties associated with uh, one of the difficulties that is associated with um, finding terms from the Greek language is that The English language is not as versatile as is. It isn't as versatile as Greek is, and you will also see that uh, uh, Sanskrit, though we're not going to be discussing that now, uh, is even more versatile than Greek, and the number of terms to designate uh, different kinds of things is far, far more in the case of Sanskrit than in any other case. But Greek itself is quite a versatile language, and among the modern languages, German is the language which is perhaps the most versatile in the context of Western Europe. Okay. Um, Now, let us try to understand how this term politics and political, how did they basically come into existence? That is the thing that we need to understand. Uh, Let me write this down for you. So this is the term that is, oh, this is not the tool I want. This is also not the tool I want. Hmm. Nope. Okay, I'll just keep removing. I'll type it out for you. Probably be better than my handwriting. The term that we need to understand is this one. You will find that Aristotle uses this particular term in the work that gets the name politics. In that, you find there is a prominent usage of this term called politia. That is how it is pronounced. Okay, it is pronounced politia. And what does politia mean? Okay, if you're looking at the meaning of the term politia, it signifies activities in the polis. Now, there are different translations of it. Some people translate it as constitution. Some people translate it as social and political activities. Now, strictly speaking, this is a no-no. Okay, this is a no-no for one reason, and that is you Politia has not yet defined politics. So if you say that Politia stands for political activities, then in reality, what you're doing is you're putting the cart before the horse. Okay, so it doesn't work that way. Politia as constitutions is also an unacceptable translation. You will find this to be the most common translation because people refer to all kinds of encyclopedia, and quite a few also will go to Wikipedia, which will tell you that Politia is a constitution, which it is not. So you have to take a neutral kind of a translation of that term, and the neutral kind of translation of that term is something which will be activities in the police. This is what we need to take into consideration. Okay, so what kind of activities are the ones that Aristotle is talking about? I will talk to you about that in detail when we start doing Aristotle. But for the moment, let me generally tell you that uh, the activities in the police that uh, Aristotle is talking about is perhaps something in the nature of governance by citizens. Now, today we are used to the idea that everybody by birth is a citizen of a country. Okay, but in Aristotle, citizens is again a poor translation, but we have to stick to that because we don't have any other word for it. Okay, citizens uh, is not what we should be looking for, because what Aristotle is looking at, what the Romans would call civic or sieve. Okay, a civic person. A civic person is one who has been entrusted with the responsibility of looking after the state. Not the state, in the Roman case, it's the empire. And if we apply it to ancient Greece, then it'll be looking after the polis, right? So, politia is the basic term which signifies activities in the polis. And that is why I told you yesterday when I was uh, talking to you about now what happened. I was talking to you yesterday about Quinonia politicae, which I said will get translated, which was translated into into Latin by the Romans as Societas Civilis. So it is very much in that spirit that, okay, this is getting to be a pain. Right. So this is what is the root of citizen. Uh, Sieve is what was the Latin term, and Quinonia politicae for Aristotle comprised of a body of people who were in charge of the governance of the polis. Please do not use the word city state, okay? Because when we talk about the city state as such, we already have a certain meaning in our mind. Please remember that many a time uh, we have this problem of conflating meanings that we have in our mind into words that don't really have those meanings. Okay, that is how we end up doing a great deal of injustice to the subject. And very often, what we also do is we imbue new meanings to old terms, which is also not a desirable activity, uh, so to speak. So, when somebody is talking about canonia politicae, what that person is talking about is a group of people who are going to be involved in, again, because of a lack of a better word, we please don't use government, you can use governance. uh, it is governance, it's a group of people who are involved in the governance of the police. I told you the police uh, is not a city state. The police is not a city state because it is neither a city nor a state as we know it. Today we know how the human mind works. Okay, we carry in our mind structures of meanings, or every word that we know or every phrase that we use doesn't have just one kind of a meaning. It has an entire structure of meanings associated with it. So if you look at the structure of meanings that are associated, say, with the city, okay, let's first start with the city because there are two different things there. One is city and the other is state. Now, if you look at the city, you would associate Hyderabad as a city. Okay, but if I probably tell you uh, that uh, place like a place like Nalgonda is a city, you won't take it. You will not accept that Mehboob Nagar is a city, right? Because you don't associate the things that you have in your mind, uh, which constitute a city. You don't have those things in your mind, and therefore you basically will not accept it. So, what is it that you have in your mind when you talk about a city? First and foremost, this is an infernal device. Uh, uh, what you have in your mind when you are talking about a city is a very big place, wide roads, and a lot of cars and motorcycles and scooters. And you will also look at electricity being given all the time. You will find uh, these days one of the most important things that defines a city is metro rail. Okay, every city which wants to be called a city is increasingly saying we want metro rail. So you'll say metro rail. So you'll look at all these things. There are certain kind of amenities that you look at and you say these are available only in the cities. Okay, and then you also look at the area and population. It has to be a large area. It has to be. It has to have very big populations or population, if you like, and it also is something that is contiguous, not continuous, but guous, written with a G. Contiguous is one area adjoins the other. Okay. I remember when I was a student of the University of Hyderabad, when I had to go there, the road that went to the University of Hyderabad, after crossing Medipatnam, it was almost a single lane, not almost, it was a single lane, which was at best 6 feet wide. There was nothing, it was like going into the wilderness. But today, if you look at that particular road, that is an arterial road full of all kinds of houses, shops, everything. So it's kind of developed. Okay. The same thing if you took the new Bombay highway, after Sanat Nagar, there used to be nothing. But now, right up to Patancheru and even probably up to Sangareddy, you will find that this has become an extension of the city. So that is what we look at when we look at the city, so to speak. And what is the state? The state is something that we associate with governance. Okay, and we basically believe that the state is there to serve its citizens, and that the state is a giver and some kind of a paternal institution. Okay, I call it a paternal institution because usually taking care of the family in terms of providing money, paying fees and all is that which is done by uh, the father. Uh, well, mothers also are doing it these days. So, if there are any feminists among you, please don't jump onto me and say I'm being a male chauvinist. I'm not. I'm just using it. You want to call it a maternal state, call it a maternal state. I have no problem. So, this maternal or paternal state that we are talking about is what we find in the countries that became free of colonialism in the 20th century. In the 20th century, it became free of colonialism, these countries have, and therefore we say that this is a paternal or a maternal state. Now, if you look at the European states, they are not paternal maternal states. Okay, the European state system is primarily based in the Peace of Westphalia. So, this nation state system that came into being in Europe in the modern period is primarily a result of the Peace of Westphalia. Please don't call it the Treaty of Westphalia, because in the Peace of Westphalia, there are many treaties that were signed uh, between different nation states. The two most important uh, treaties which are there in the uh, Peace of Westphalia were signed between 1640 and 1680. Uh, the first one is called the Treaty of Osnabrück. If I have to write this, okay, there is a treaty of Osnabrück, and then there is another treaty, sorry, which is called the Treaty of Munster. These two treaties within the Peace of Westphalia, Westphalia is a territory, was an empire actually. So within that, these two treaties led to the creation of the nation state system in Europe, and therefore the European states are called the Westphalian state systems. And when we talk about the European state systems, we also include the United States of America, which was nothing but an extension at one time of uh, the Anglo-Saxon uh, English state. Uh, Now, Westphalian state systems are not paternal and maternal. The state systems which are paternal and maternal, or maternal, not and maternal, or maybe both, are those which are categorized as post colonial states. Now, India is typically a post colonial state. Okay. And when we became independent, we said we will, the freedom fighters who took part in the fight against colonialism, they basically said that we will have a system of governance that takes care of every citizen in the country once it becomes independent. And that is the reason why you will find that there are a number of things that you can do here in the Indian state, which you cannot do in a typical Westphalian state. Now, in Indian states, we routinely write off loans, okay, especially farmers' loans. If for whatever reasons farmers are not in a position to pay back their dues, the loans that they have taken, then the state steps in and says, we are going to write off these loans, right? And it can be written off. It is written off, right? And nobody protests. Nobody protests and says, why are you writing off these loans? And when people say that we will uh, provide Medicare through, say, a program like Rajiv Arogyasri in India, people were happy about that. Okay, people were happy that the state had taken on the responsibility of, you know, uh, providing health care to those who are otherwise not getting the best health care. So, super specialty hospitals, which were originally meant only for the rich, those super specialty hospitals started becoming accessible to people. And at the same time, there was also that scheme of fee reimbursement, which basically meant that, just because you're poor, you don't have to worry about education. You can you can have education. If you're poor, it is the duty of the state to pay it off. Now, at the same time that was being done in at the same time that this was being done in India, especially in um, especially in Andhra Pradesh, the then undivided Andhra Pradesh, Obama was trying to do the same thing, and he met with tremendous resistance. The matter went to the Supreme Court of America, and there they had a vote, and it was by one vote that that system, which came to be called Obamacare, which was free medical care for the poor, okay, that was carried out. And when that was carried out, there was a hue and cry in America. At that time, I was there, and people kept saying, these are lazy people, they don't work. We are working hard. Why should our money go into taking care of those who don't want to do anything in life, those who don't want to take care of themselves? So, this is what they were saying there. Okay. And they said you cannot provide all these things to people free of cost. So, but however, it got carried on, and the bill passed. But after Donald Trump became the president, the first thing he did is he abrogated that particular uh, law that was created by the Obama administration. Okay. Donald Trump said there'll be no free Medicare. Nothing will be free. Okay. Now, if you look at the Europeans were like that, but they are not completely like how the United States is. And the reason for that is the intervention of Karl Marx. Okay. And Karl Marx is somebody who wrote a virulent criticism of the uh, state system in Europe. And he said the state is not a neutral institution. The state, according to him, and I'm sure you know, is an instrument of class exploitation. Okay, so he called it an instrument of class exploitation by saying that it legitimizes exploitative laws. Okay, what does it do? It legitimizes. So please remember, this is a time that democracy had not yet set, full proper democracy had not yet uh, come into being in Europe. It was still the propertied class who were the people who could vote, while the others could not. So, uh, what Karl Marx said is that the state is an instrument in the hands of the capitalist class, and it legitimizes the exploitation of the working class by the capitalist class. And it does so by making rules, by making, by creating as constitutional systems wherein it does not take into consideration the well being of the poor, the well being of the working class. It only takes care of the necessities of the capitalist class. So that was a very stinging criticism, and it was very true. So if you look at what was happening in the Marxian times, you will find that people were working in underground mines, basically coal mines. They were working in them for sometimes days together. They wouldn't be able to come out of a mine. And once they came out of a mine, it, what did they get paid? They got paid a pittance. Okay, very little. So there was no such thing as hourly payment, and there was no such thing as how many hours will constitute a working day. No such thing was there. So people were made to work for an indefinite period of time, and they were paid very, very little. So that is why he called it an, an instrument of class exploitation. So the state in uh, England, especially, because that's where uh, Karl Marx had exiled himself to when he was driven out of Germany for being, he was called an insurrectionist. So he went to England, and most of his writings were done in England, though they were done in German. Uh, he, coming under this particular criticism, you had the creation of Uh, Within the Westphalian state, you had the creation of a welfare state. Now, the welfare state is something that one should understand as that which took care of some of the problems of all of its citizens, not all problems of all citizens. Some became a lot more welfarist. For example, Germany, the Netherlands, and Finland, where you get education from your nursery to your postdoctoral degrees. You get free education. You are provided education only by the state, institutions of the state. And these three countries took it to that extreme. They also give you Medicare, which is very, very affordable. And as you grow older, it becomes free. In England, the changes were not that sweeping, but they did take into consideration the whole idea that some people perhaps need to be taken care of in order to get rid of this whole thing called instrument of class exploitation. To get rid of that, they basically thought what they should be doing is that they should be introducing some measures that look like the state is not concerned only with the capitalist class but with other classes as well. So it and it introduced the system of an unemployment allowance, which is what it calls now, but at one time it was simply called the dole, dole. A dole is something that you give as, the best word for that is in Urdu, khairat. Okay, khairat is some kind of a begging thing that you're giving. Okay, so it's a dole, they called it, but they realized that it is politically wrong to say these things. It's all right to think those things, but you shouldn't say those things in public. That is the greatness of all these Western countries. You have to be politically right. You can think the most horrible of thoughts, but you shouldn't express them like that. And so they said unemployment allowance. And if you're beyond 60 years of age, then you get free Medicare. So some of these things were introduced in England as well. So in Europe, by and large, and definitely there was in France. So by and large, you find that in Europe, uh, there was a shift towards a welfare state. Uh, so much so that the shift towards the welfare state also culminated in a different kind of politics in England, where you had the idea of a Labour Party. And by the 1920s, the Labour Party had replaced the Liberal Party as the main opposition to the Conservative Party, which is also called the Tory Party, Tory. Okay, the original name for that was Tory, the Conservative Party. Even today, they are called the Tories. The Liberals were called the Whigs, Whigs. They were called the Whigs, and they then became the Liberal Party. The Liberal Party exists even today. But the main opposite, and many people will tell you that the UK is a two-party system. It is not. It is a multi-party system, and the other parties are fringe parties. That's the difference. Okay, and they don't have a party for every person like we have in our country. Everybody has his own political party. That's not how it is, but they are a multi-party system. Anyway, So the welfare state came into being. So when we talk about a state, all these meanings are the ones that are coming in. And when we talk about the polis as a city state, then we are looking at conflating all these meanings. We are looking at conflating all these meanings into the Greek polis. The Greek polis, strictly speaking, was none of these things. Okay, it was absolutely none of these things. So, what was the Greek polis? How was it organized? Okay, so let's have a look at that. Now, if you go to the Greek polis, I wish there was something that I could draw with. It says draw, but okay. This is the Acropolis. Jesus, this is terrible when things like this happen. Sorry. Uh, this is the Acropolis, which is on a hill or a mound. Okay. And it is on this that you have that Parthenon, Parthenon, that structure. And all around this Acropolis, you had these were all different villages. So it was not a city, right? There were all these different villages. And in the Acropolis, they also had a presiding goddess. And when we talk about Plato and Aristotle, so I'll talk about that. The presiding goddess here was Athena. So the polis came to be called it came to be called Athens. Okay, the polis came to be called Athens. But these were all different villages, mind you. They are disconnected. Okay, and only the citizens of each of these villages gathered periodically at the Acropolis. Okay, they gathered periodically at the Acropolis in order to discuss the administration of all these different villages, which all together were called polis. Okay, so politia, again, I go back to that word. Politia is the activity in this polis. And that's how you have the idea of the political, and you have the birth of politics. I told you yesterday, and I repeat that again today, that with the Greeks, with the decline of the Greek civilization, you would find that there is a disappearance of the word politics, of the word polis. Obviously, politia also would have disappeared. So, that particular activity that was called politics was no longer there. Okay, in the Roman Empire, I told you that the Roman Empire was something in the nature of a the Roman Empire was something in the nature of a how should I put it? It was a primitive republic, but it became an imperial system after Julius Caesar. With Julius Caesar and after him, in its length and breadth are truly breathtaking. Uh, Most definitely, Gibbons, one of the scholars of ancient Europe, he is somebody who is so taken in with the Romans that he thinks that the Romans did no wrong. He believed in the glory and the infallibility of the Romans. But that's a different story. Let's stick to politics for the time being. So, the activity politia, which you find in the Acropolis, in the polis, and the decisions taken in the Acropolis through the meeting of citizens, and citizens were chosen on the basis of various different criteria, wisdom being one of them, their being prominent in society being another of them, their being educated being a third thing. So there were criteria like this, and so those people were designated citizens. They were very limited in number, and those people took care of what we find in the police. Okay, so this is as far as Athens is concerned. Okay, Athens was what was ruled, the polis called Athens was ruled by a group of citizens. People will tell you there was democracy in Athens. There was no democracy in Athens. A rule of a few people does not get called a democracy. You should also remember that the United States of America, even today, people will tell you it's the second biggest democracy in the world. I'll ask you a question. Let me break the monotony. Somebody tell me, is the United States of America a real democracy? Hmm? Somebody volunteer, please. Isn't it boring listening to me?
No, sir.
It's not boring. I would have thought you would have gone to sleep by now.
No, sir.
No, my lectures have either one of two extreme effects. Some people are traumatized completely by my lectures. Other people sleep peacefully during my lecture. Any which way, that's not very good for me. Okay. Anyway, that's like I said, I have a lousy sense of humor. You must pardon me for that. So somebody tell me, is United States of America a democracy?
Yes, it is, sir.
They are a democracy?
Yes, sir.
How many people vote for the president of America? We had an election recently and Donald Trump threw tantrums, unbelievable tantrums. He disgraced America in the eyes of the whole world, which I appreciate because it is a disgraceful system that they have. Mm. So 538 people elect the president of America. These 538 people are called the Electoral College. Okay. How many party system is America?
Bi-party system. Two-party system.
Two party system? Really?
Yes, sir.
What if I tell you that it is a no party system? Do you know it is only around the 1940s that you had the consolidation of these two parties? The Democratic Party, they call it, but there is no party. Oh my God, somebody is with. Okay. Um, it's only in the late 1930s and 1940s that you have these two, and these are not parties, by the way, because if you look at India, we have two kinds of parties. One is somebody needs to mute their phone because I can hear. Yeah. One is um, one thing that you must understand is that in India, we have what are called mass-based parties. Actually, we have, truly speaking, only one mass-based party, and that happens to be the Congress, the Indian National Congress. That is because of the fact that its history goes back to the pre-independence days. That is called a mass-based party. The other parties are those which are called cadre-based parties. Okay, this is what we have in India. Either a mass party or a cadre-based parties, right? The communists, actually, the communist parties are the ones that began as cadre-based parties, but even regional parties uh, such as Telugu Desam Party, then the TRS, they also have a Politburo, exactly like the communists have. So they are all cadre-based parties. The BJP is a cadre-based party, okay, and its cadre is drawn from its parent organization, the RSS. Somebody needs to mute your mic, please. There is some disturbance. Somebody needs to mute. I would really appreciate that if you do. It's a bit distracting. As it is, I get distracted easily. Thank you. Okay. So we have these two kinds of parties, and both parties have memberships. Okay. There are members of the mass-based parties, and we have members of the cadre-based parties. But in America, you have what are called caucuses. A caucus is a closed group, okay? A closed group of people who sit together and take decisions. So if you look at the American system, there are no parties. There are Republican caucuses, there are Democratic caucuses. And nobody is stopping anybody else starting a third caucus or a fourth caucus. There were times when there were four parties and five parties in American history. And we all believe that, the American president only has 2 terms to do. That is also a new development. That is because some people were going on getting elected again and again. We are basically talking about people like Benjamin Franklin and uh, Theodore Roosevelt. So when we talk about all these people, so they decided that nobody will be president more than twice. And who took that decision? That is the caucuses. It has nothing to do with the Constitution. Okay. Have you seen the Constitution of America? It is the size of your cell phone. Literally the size of your cell phone. And it is about 25 pages. In that, it's this big, like this, a document like this. So most of the decisions are taken by the caucuses. So Donald Trump was not a member of the Republican Party. He offered his candidature to the Republican caucus or caucuses in different states, saying that I will do so and so things for you. And these things will make things better for the Republican Party and for those who support the Republican caucuses. So what are all these primaries? You say they won primaries, in so and so state. So you first have to be accepted as a presidential candidate. Here we give what are called party tickets. Okay. The party decides who's going to contest an election from a particular constituency. In America, it isn't that. You have to present yourself in front of the caucus and say that I can do this and this is how I will implement the Republican agenda or the Democratic agenda, whatever it is, this is how I will implement it. And if they are convinced, and if you get more number of votes of the caucuses in the primaries, then you become a candidate for the presidential election. Once you become a candidate for your presidential election, you pick up a running mate who will be the vice president. Okay. And then the country will go and elect an electoral college. There is a thing called popular vote, but the popular vote is not to vote for the president, but to vote for 538 people who will be called the Electoral College. Now, this was something that people didn't know for a very long time. But the year 2000 was an eye-opener for many people in the world. It is a very significant year, the year 2000, because the people voted for a democratic candidate. Okay, more number of people, popular vote, wanted the electoral college to vote for democratic candidate. Okay, so those who promised to vote democratic candidates, they were voted into the electoral college. Now this election was fought between Al Gore and George W. Bush. That is the junior Bush. The senior Bush is George Herbert Bush. Now, if you look at what happened in the Electoral College, a majority of the Electoral College voted uh, uh, for those who said they will vote for a democratic, a majority of them voted for the Republican candidate, George Bush, even though the popular vote was mandated for the Electoral College to elect a Democratic candidate. So Al Gore refused to accept defeat. He took the case to the Supreme Court of America. And in the Supreme Court of America, a verdict was given. And what was the verdict? The verdict that was given in the Supreme Court of America was that in the Constitution, there is no sanctity to the votes of the popular, there's no sanctity to the popular vote. The only votes that are recognized by the Constitution of America are these 538 votes that are given by the Electoral College. So, even though the popular vote was in favor of Al Gore, meaning the Democratic Party, even though it was in favor of the Democratic Party, the Electoral College reneged on their promises and they basically voted Al Gore, George Bush. And Supreme Court said, too bad, you have to accept George Bush. He's your president. And once again, in 2016, Hillary Clinton got 2 million votes more in the popular vote, which again voted for the Electoral College. She got 2 million votes more than the Republican candidate Donald Trump. But the Electoral College voted for Donald Trump. And Donald Trump became the president. And since there was already a precedent of Al Gore having lost his case by challenging the votes of the Electoral College, Hillary Clinton did not even bother. Hillary Clinton did not even bother to go back to the Supreme Court again. She just conceded defeat. Okay, so America is not a democracy. Please get this straight. It's not a true democracy at all. It is probably an oligarchy. And who are the oligarchs? The oligarchs are the Caucasus and the 538 members of the Electoral College. Even this time, when Donald Trump lost, he got 232 votes against 306 that Joe Biden got. Okay, so that's it. That's the simple mathematics there. There is no great complexity. So it's an oligarchy. Now, I told you this story because if you go to other states in uh, the plural of polis is police. That is the plural of polis. Okay. So all those people who were in the various different police, so to speak, these people basically uh, were under the rule of different oligarchies. Sometimes they were under monarchies. An example is Alexander the Great from Macedonia, but uh, police like Sparta, Stagira, all these had oligarchies, a group of people ruling them. Athens is the only one which talked about citizens, the others didn't. That is why people confuse it with a direct democracy. There is no direct democracy. That is also it's a variation of an oligarchy. There was no democracy. And if you read any Greek political thinker, including Aristotle, you will find that nobody supported the idea of what we call a democracy. A democracy was seen by most people as mobocracy or the rule of the mob. Okay, so Plato calls it a mobocracy. Aristotle calls it a mobocracy, though he disagrees with Plato on almost everything else. Okay, he almost on everything else he disagrees with Aristotle. With Plato, but he agreed with Plato on this one particular thing, that a democracy is the most undesirable form of government because it is the equivalent of a mob rule, not an enlightened rule. Okay, so if you look at this entire picture that I have put in front of you, you will find that the police is a distinct organization, and there is no such thing again in the history of the world. It was there only in ancient Greece. So when the Romans came, when the Greeks went into decline, and when the Romans came into power, the word polis, politics, everything disappeared. There was no use of this particular term at all. Okay, people just didn't use the term politics anymore. And you will see that the Romans didn't have anything that can be categorized as political thought. They were more concerned with jurisprudence. Jurisprudence is laws, how to make laws. Actually, jurisprudence is codification of laws. Okay, that's what jurisprudence means, codification of laws, right? And who were the people who were involved in this? People like Cicero and Seneca Jr. There were two Senecas, even the elder Seneca. Oh, sorry, what did I put here? Sorry, this is wrong. It is, oh, Jesus, everything goes off. Seneca the Younger. So that is along with Cicero. Cicero, Seneca the Younger, the older was also involved in it, but the younger was more prominent. They were looking at jurisprudence. Now, out of these two, Seneca the Younger basically is someone who looked back at the Greek civilization, and he looked towards people like Zeno of Elia. It's pronounced as Zeno of Elia. Zeno of Elia is usually considered to be the originator of the dialectical method of thinking. Okay, he is somebody who's uh, supposed to have first introduced the dialectical method. So you will find that Zeno of Elia was somebody that Seneca the Younger relied on, but never did he use the word politics. That is the funny part, because Zeno of Elia also does not use the word politics. And Zeno of Elia is a pre-Socratic thinker. So you must keep in mind that it is to a very limited. Who is this 1487 who's going in and out? Hmm. So if you are looking at this, then the thing that you need to understand is that, is this being recorded? Yeah, it is recorded. Yeah. So Zeno, Velia, I will talk to him when I get into the Greeks. Uh, I have a tendency to spend a lot of time with the Greeks because the Greeks are very important in understanding the whole idea of politics. How well you understand politics depends on how well you understand the Greeks. Okay, so during the Roman period, you have the disappearance of the word politics and political thought. You have jurisprudence. This is what people are talking about. This is the thing. And when the Roman Empire lost its power to Christianity, which is the medieval period, okay, then we find that we basically find that I'll leave these words just in case we need them. We find the word religion taking over, and this word subsumes everything else. Okay. Can somebody tell me how many religions are there in the world?
Innumerable.
Yes,
Innumerable?
sir, it's more than.
Sorry? I heard Mr. Akshay Puneet say innumerable. What were you saying, Mr. Hanmantu?
Yes, sir, it's so many religions in the world.
Really? Are there
Innumerable.
so are there so many religions? Hmm?
Yes, sir. As much I concern,
Mm-hmm.
as I know, sir.
As you know. No, I'm asking you as you know only.
Yes, sir.
Well, why would I ask
Yeah.
you? Uh,
In India, we have
hmm.
innumerable, sir.
So give me some names, please. In India.
Hinduism,
Hmm?
Sikhism, Buddhism,
Sikhism, Buddhism,
Buddhism,
hmm.
Lingayats,
Christianity.
Lingayat, Christianity,
Judaism,
Judaism,
Zoroastrianism,
Zoroastrianism. Mhm. What if I tell you that in the world there are only 3 religions? What are your what is your reaction to that? Hmm? Seriously, I'll say there are only 3 religions.
How to see?
maybe there are three main religions and sub-religions have emerged out of those three main.
Okay, so here I'm putting the 3 religions. Jesus, I'm terrible at typing, sorry. These are the only 3 religions in the world.
there is Hindu religion also, no, sir.
What is the meaning of Hindu? Please tell me.
People who live in by the river Sindhu.
So why is that a religion? If they lived by the Sindhu, why are they called Hindus? They should be called Sindhus, no? See, India was called. Now let me get rid of these so I can start with where. India was called Sapta Sindhu. Sapta Sindhu because 7 rivers along with the Sindhu, which is the main river. Okay. The name Hindu came from the province which was called Persis or Persia. Though the Europeans have later made it Persia, it was Persis or Persia, and this was a part of Iran. So, in the Farsi language, which is the language spoken by the Iranians, which people call Persian now. Actually, the language is Farsi. In the Farsi language, in the 6th century, BCE, under the rule of Darius. Darius the First, this became Hapta Hindu. Actually, the way it is pronounced is Hapta Hindu. Okay. So Hindu is a designation given by the Farsi language by people who were in the Persis or the Persian part of Iran. We think Persia is the old name of Iran. It is not. Persia was a part of Iran. Okay. So the Parsis who came to India came from Parsis. They are the Parsis. And the language they speak is Farsi. Okay. Now, what you must understand is that what we call a religion are only these 3 things because they are, how do I, now let me get rid of this with your permission. Oh, I got rid of the wrong thing. The 3 religions, Judaism and all of them are monotheistic. one God only. I spoke to you about Cicero, who defined, Cicero defined, see, somebody is really washing vessels. That's not a polite thing to do. Cicero defined relegare as monotheistic. The origin of the term religion is in religare. So I'll stop here because you have to go to the next class. The clock says 10 minutes, 10:38, so you have only 2 minutes. I'll stop here. I'll pick up here, but you have to know these things because I'm telling you the word political disappears for centuries and it only appears again in the modern period. Okay, it appears again only in the modern period. If you have to understand all that, you'll have to understand all these different things. I will tell you the difference between religions and cosmologies. That is the topic for tomorrow. Okay, thank you very much. You have only 1 minute, so I will let you off immediately, but please remember this point, right? And we'll talk about this tomorrow. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I hope I haven't bored the
No, sir.
wits out of you. Okay. Thank you.
Thank
Right.
you, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye, sir.
Thank you very much.